Hi, everyone. Kathy Rose here, and I want to talk to you about the new moon in Sagittarius coming up on November 23rd, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. The mandala that you see on the screen is the representation that I created for the sign Sagittarius. So take a look, blend with it for a second. You're going to see these dynamic purples. You're going to see the energy expressing outward, seeking adventure, because Sagittarius is very much connected with the pursuit of truth. You're going to see the glyph in the middle has an arrow. It's pointing towards something. It's on a mission. And that mission is to pursue what is the meaning of life, what is truth on the highest level, what is high consciousness. And so all of that carries into this new moon. That symbolism is going to be there. So let's take a deeper look now. Let me adjust this for a second. So if you look on the left side of the screen, you're going to see the chart of the new moon. This is set for Washington, D.C. If you're living in a different country, the house positions may change, but the relationship to all the planets will remain the same. So don't worry about that part. And if you don't know how to read a chart, then don't even look at it. Just look at the text on the right side of the screen. But what stands out the most with this new moon chart is the fact that we have such a concentration of energy in the mutable modality. 4 planets in Sagittarius, 2 planets in Pisces, and 1 planet in Gemini. And first of all, this is suggesting a lighter energy than we've been feeling for the past month. Remember, on October 25th, we had that really strong new moon partial eclipse in Scorpio, which was very emotional, very deep, super profound. And then on November 8th, we had that full moon total eclipse in Taurus, which was also very profound and very deep. But both of those were really operating on the physical plane. You know, how do we do life and nitty-gritty physical activities, real life? Now with Sagittarius, it's going to take it more to a philosophical level, and it's going to elevate it into consciousness. And what we're being asked to look at is, what do we think about truth? What are our beliefs? And this is going to challenge us to go to a higher level. So the first thing I want to focus on is the highest expression of all with Sagittarius is going to be that adventurous pursuit of truth and the pursuit of freedom. And when Sagittarius is expressed on that highest level, there is that acknowledgement and that understanding that not everybody sees truth in exactly the same way. And the beautiful part of Sagittarius can grant permission to another person to perhaps view life slightly differently. And there is that freedom that says it's okay, because it all ends up going back to the same source. And for this moment, if we are viewing something differently, that's okay. So that's the highest expression of Sagittarius. And it offers this incredible flexibility and freedom philosophically. Now, if Sagittarius energy is stressed out, then the shadow comes out. And this is when opinions can become very extreme. And this is the shadow expression can flow into dogma and righteousness, the emphatic sort of, I'm right, and my way of viewing the truth is correct, and your way is wrong. And this comes into polarization. This comes into accusing somebody else of being bad or evil, or the other names people project or labels people project onto each other. And this is the shadow side of Sagittarius. You know, every single sign has a shadow that we need to become aware of and try to steer it into the higher levels. Well, this new moon gives us the opportunity to look at our perspective about truth and higher consciousness and about our own personal philosophy, and to just take a moment and pause and ask ourselves, has our opinion of truth and rightness become dogmatic? Are we tight? Are we not able to view life through another person's eyes? Now, it can be very challenging, and especially here in the United States, having just gone through an election where things are so phenomenally polarized. It seems to be increasingly difficult to try to view another person's perspective gracefully. There's a lot of accusations right now. There's a lot of intensity as we are all really focused on trying to get truth integrated in life. So it brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is idealism. There's an idealistic structure very much present in this new moon chart, which is Venus-Mercury conjunct in Sagittarius, echoed and reinforced by the fact that Jupiter, Neptune are conjunct in Pisces, and that Jupiter-Neptune is square Mars. So when you have Venus-Mercury conjunct echoed by Jupiter-Neptune, we are really, really feeling a wave of idealism flowing through, devotion to a dream. Now, what's interesting is the vast majority of my clients have a very strong idealistic mindset. And most people who watch these kinds of videos will also have that kind of mindset, or who are attracted to astrology or anything metaphysical. There is this opportunity to go past the heaviness of the present and to go into the potential of what could be. This is the definition of idealism. What can happen, though, and what this new moon in Sagittarius is trying to warn us, is to not project our idealistic view with such strong opinions that we forget that perhaps the person we're viewing from that idealistic viewpoint may not be ready to go to that level. So this is a very, very strong warning in this new moon chart to say, remember to respect another person's choice. Just because you can see the potential, just because you can see where you think they should be or how their life should be going or what could be, doesn't mean they are anywhere close to being ready to activate that. And what ends up happening is when the idealistic person who is so connected to the goodness of, I just want to elevate and treat other people in this way with so much potential and lovingness, and I want the world to act this way. What happens is there is a frustration that builds up because not all the world is ready for that. This is a classroom. I think the earth is a school, and there are many grade levels and many levels of consciousness. And just because in your own idealistic mindset, you can see what could be, doesn't mean it's ready to manifest. And it is that frustration level that is showing up in this horoscope with Mars and Gemini squaring Jupiter and Neptune. So in essence, what this new moon is suggesting is to learn to key into the frequency of acceptance, accepting people for where they are right now, and hang on to your own idealism and your own elevated way of looking at life and live it to the best of your ability. Just don't expect other people to also reach that level. I hope that makes sense to you, but this is really, really important. But otherwise, idealism can lack that realistic viewpoint, and you can miss signals that are really important, because when the idealistic mindset goes too far, you end up projecting that potential onto people and missing key signals that could help you make good decisions. And then you end up crashing into a disappointment cycle, or you end up frustrated and judging or becoming cynical. So when we look at this chart, we're going to see Saturn squaring Uranus. And this is an aspect that's been going on all of 2021, continues into 2022. This Saturn square Uranus energy is trying to challenge the status quo. It's trying to challenge tradition, trying to challenge where we've become locked up and tight. And it's trying to release that tension and create circulation. Certainly for the spiritually oriented people who are working so hard to bring goodness and lovingness into the world, there is still that cautionary message here to say, are you flowing into rightness? Are you becoming dogmatic or righteous about your viewpoint being the right one? And so the test that is showing up here in this chart is to remind us to look through another person's eyes and to consider their viewpoint deeply, at least to consider, why do they have this viewpoint? We don't have to agree with another person's view of truth. Our opinion may be very, very different than theirs, but to at least breathe and pause and say, why do they have that opinion? As opposed to just automatically saying, you're wrong, I'm right, you're not in my team, I'm going to go hang out with my own team. That's where Sagittarius can end up becoming the shadow expression, because it really can become dogmatic and judgmental. So what we have going on here, if you look at the chart, is a very important aspect that is going to prevent dogmatism eventually. I mean, it's really going to point to the fact that that paradigm doesn't work, especially for spiritually minded people. And this has to do with the aspect of Uranus, quindecile, the sun and the moon. The quindecile is a specialty aspect. It's a minor one. It is 165 degrees. Now, my good friend, astrologer Noel Till, really brought this aspect forward and helped to develop it. The quindecile is an aspect that can show extreme intensity, almost an obsessiveness, unrelenting super focus. And in this way, again, it's the planet Uranus. Just like in the previous slide, I showed you Uranus is square Saturn. Now we're talking about Uranus, quindecile, sun and moon. What this is talking about is continuing this mode of breaking up stagnation, challenging the status quo. And you may think, as a spiritual person, I'm not involved with status quo. I am connected to being progressive and being free. But have you become overly opinionated with how you think that should be? That's the challenge here. Now, if you look on the right, you're going to see a mandala that I created a long time ago. And I chose this one because it seems to me to represent all the electricity that Uranus is offering, the circulation of energy, the spark that breaks up status quo and stagnation and gets things moving again, like jumper cables on a car that helps to give a spark to the dead battery to get the car going again. But what I have to say, which is really fascinating to me, is that the new moon in Scorpio, that was October 25th, had this same quindecile from Uranus to the sun and moon, but it was the sun and moon in Scorpio. So it was still 165 degree aspect. It's just that the sun and moon were 30 degrees earlier. Now, you may not know enough astrology to have that make sense. The bottom line on this is, it is fascinating to me that this same aspect is repeating, saying the same thing, saying there needs to be circulation, in this case in Sagittarius, in our perception of truth, in whether we apply freedom to other people perhaps having a different point of view, or our ability to at least communicate with people who have a different point of view, to try to come to terms with that. So there's a lot of agitation around this. And I'm sure people who are watching this video or other astrology videos are probably high consciousness with strong motives to be helpful and loving and to move life forward. But I still would challenge you to ask yourself, have you become super opinionated about how life should be or could be? Has idealism driven you to the point where you can't consider a different way. It's uncomfortable to think about that, right? Because the last thing spiritual people want to be is judgmental. In fact, that's what they are reacting against. But sometimes when you get so locked into your own view, you do become judgmental because you judge anybody who doesn't have the same view. All I'm saying is take the time to look at that and think about that during this new moon in Sagittarius. So what I have on the screen now, it says the problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. This new moon in Sagittarius is all about attitude. It's all about perception. It's all about how you are viewing things. And if you have the flexibility, which is that mutable energy, to consider maybe adapting your view or listening to somebody else or considering things from a different perspective. It's very interesting. So the last slide I want to offer to you is a piece of art that I created years ago. In fact, it's on my wall behind me. It's one of my favorites because it's meaningful to me. It symbolizes the divine flow, the divine information, the conduit that we are that receives all of that divine lovingness and information. And if we can open our heart, just like the lady that's in the painting has her heart open wide to receive that flow, to become that clear conduit, to let it wash through her. That is part of, I think, what this new moon in Sagittarius is trying to achieve. Open up, let the energy flow through you, and surrender to the flow. See where that takes you. You know, Sagittarius is connected with adventure, the need to have adventure, the need to pursue truth. And it begins and ends really in our mind, in our perception, in our opinions. So I hope that this image clearly demonstrates how this energy can wash through you and maybe loosen up where you have formed very strong attachments to how you think things should be or could be. And instead, just let it flow through playfully, delightfully, with flexibility, and with freedom. That's the challenge of this. You may not need to really adjust how you see truth, but perhaps you need to have it just cleansed a little bit or refreshed or lightened up or loosened up. Just do a double check, deep breath into your heart and ask yourself, have you slipped into any kind of righteousness about your view in the world? Have you gone into intense attachment to your way is the right way and someone else's is the wrong way? And maybe take a deep breath and loosen that up right now, because it's not going to help the world come to a cohesive place in the middle. Any kind of middle ground that's formed is going to have to be we're able to discuss with people and find out why they are thinking the way they are and come to that middle ground. I hope that all makes sense to you. This one is very complex, and it really does begin and end in our own mind and our own heart. So I'm sending you love and support and blessings as always. Let this new moon in Sagittarius be delightful and fun. Enjoy the lightness that it has as opposed to the heavy emotional energy. And let us all get to that relaxed place in truth where we can all evolve and appreciate each other. All right, bye for now.